He interviewed over 400 women, not therapists, not relationship coaches, not academics, women who had seen more men in a single year than most men see in a lifetime. Women with no reason to lie, no agenda to protect, no feelings to manage, just observation, pure clinical devastating observation. And when he compiled his findings, he sat in silence for a long time. Because what he found wasn't about looks, wasn't about money, wasn't about charm or height or status. What he found was something far more uncomfortable. Something that most men do every single day without realizing it, without being told, without any warning before it's already too late. He found the exact moment a man becomes invisible, not rejected, not disliked, invisible. The quiet eraser that happens before she even consciously decides anything, before the unanswered text, before the cold tone, before the slow fade. You couldn't explain and she couldn't articulate. The moment it was already over while you were still thinking everything was fine, that moment has a pattern, and by the end of this video you will know it. Not theoretically, not philosophically, precisely. Because the problem isn't that men don't care. It's that they care in ways that destroy them, and they don't even know the rules of the game they're losing. Machiavelli understood something the modern man has forgotten. Power, real power, is not declared. It is perceived. It is felt before it is understood. And the same is true for value. You don't announce it. You don't argue for it. You either project it or you don't. And if you don't, no amount of effort, affection or presence will recover it. This is not about being cold. This is not about manipulation. This is about understanding the invisible architecture of how value is communicated, and more critically how it is destroyed, silently, gradually, in ways you never see coming until she's already gone. Pay attention. This is the information nobody gives you. Most men think they lose a woman in a moment. A fight, a mistake, a wrong word at the wrong time. They're wrong. Loss of value doesn't happen in noise. It happens in silence, in the accumulation of small signals you sent without knowing you were sending them, in the pattern of behavior that over days and weeks drew a picture you never intended, the picture of a man without a center. Here's what the researcher found consistently across every interview. Women don't decide to lose interest. Their body decides first. Something shifts. A feeling disappears. Desire doesn't fade gradually like a sunset. It switches off like a light. One day it's there, then it's not. And she can't fully explain it because it didn't come from logic. It came from biology, your anxiety. She felt it before you expressed it. Your need for approval. She sensed it before you asked for it. Your fear of losing her. She knew it before you admitted it to yourself. This is the brutal reality of attraction. It doesn't operate through fairness. It doesn't reward effort. It responds to signals. And most men are broadcasting the wrong ones at maximum volume while believing they're doing everything right. Ask yourself this. In the last interaction you had with a woman you were interested in, what were you actually communicating? Not with your words, with your energy, with your timing, with the weight or absence of weight behind what you said. Most men, if they answer honestly, will find the same thing. They were communicating need quietly, invisibly, persistently, and need at a biological level is the single most powerful signal of low value there is. There are 3 behaviors that appear harmless, even noble, that consistently collapse a man's perceived value. The researcher found them in nearly every account. Machiavelli would have identified them immediately, because each one is a form of revealed weakness, and revealed weakness, in any power dynamic, is the beginning of the end. The first early emotional overexposure. You meet someone, the connection feels real. You start investing. You open up fast, share your world. Express how much you feel, how much potential you see. You go deep early. It feels authentic. It feels brave. But here's what she receives. A man without options. A man so starved for connection that he front-loads all his emotional capital in the first interaction, because he isn't confident there will be more. Scarcity of demand is what creates perceived value in any market, relationships included. When you give everything immediately, you signal that you are not in demand. You are available entirely, desperately. Completely available and available at a biological level does not read as devoted. It reads as low status. The counterintuitive truth, restraint is power. The man who reveals himself slowly, who makes her work slightly to understand him, who maintains an interior life she hasn't fully accessed, that man is perceived as valuable because he behaves like a man with options, like a man who has chosen to be here, not fallen here out of desperation. The second, structural availability. You reply within seconds, always. You cancel your plans when she's free. You rearrange your schedule, your priorities, your entire week around a possibility, the possibility that she might want to see you. You think this shows devotion. It shows something else entirely. It shows that you have nothing more important than her. And while that sounds romantic in a movie, in reality it signals one devastating thing. You have no life of your own, no direction, no mission, no structure that exists independent of her presence. Machiavelli wrote extensively about the prince who makes himself too accessible. The moment a ruler can be reached at any hour by anyone for anything, he has communicated that his time has no value, and a man whose time has no value has no value. This is not about playing games, this is about having a real life, one that doesn't restructure itself around female attention, one that continues with or without her, one that she has to enter, not one that collapses inward to accommodate her. The man with a mission is attractive because his existence does not depend on her approval. He has somewhere to be, something that matters, a direction that doesn't pause because she texted. That independence, real, not performed, is one of the most powerful signals a man can send. The third, validation seeking. This is the most subtle and the most lethal. You fish for reassurance. You ask indirectly or directly if she likes you. You analyze her responses for signs of interest. You monitor her behavior for evidence that you are safe. You seek the signal that says you are enough. You are chosen. You are approved. And every time you do this, every time you reach outward for confirmation of your own value, you communicate that you do not have it internally, that your sense of self is contingent, that you need her perception of you to feel stable. This is what women feel, not consciously always, but they feel it. The anxious energy behind the message sent 3 minutes after the last one. The slight desperation in the joke told just a little too hard. The over-explanation when silence would have been stronger. The checking is always visible. Desire does not survive this energy. Not because women are cruel, because biology is ancient. And at a primal level, a man who needs external validation to feel solid is communicating one clear thing. He is not solid. He is built on the approval of others. And that is not a foundation anyone, male or female, finds stable enough to trust. Machiavelli never wrote about dating, he wrote about power, but the architecture is identical. In The Prince, he makes an observation that should be printed on the wall of every man trying to understand attraction. He writes not in these exact words, but in this exact truth, that a ruler who is seen to need others has already begun to lose. The moment dependence is visible, authority dissolves because power, real power, is perceived as self-sustaining. It does not require confirmation, it does not ask for permission, it does not flinch when challenged. Now translate that to your daily interactions. When you over-explain yourself, you are asking for understanding, which is asking for approval. When you double text, you are seeking confirmation that you are still wanted, which is asking for reassurance. When you are excessively agreeable, you are avoiding conflict, which is asking for peace at the cost of your own position. Every one of these behaviors is a form of political weakness, and just as the prince who begs for loyalty loses it, the man who begs for desire loses it. The correction is not to become cold, the correction is to become centered. Centeredness means your emotional state originates from within. It means you have a relationship with yourself that does not depend on her reaction. It means when she goes cold, you don't spiral. When she tests you, you don't collapse. When silence appears, you don't fill it with noise just to manage your own anxiety. The centered man is attractive because he is stable, genuinely not performatively stable. And stability in a world full of reactive, anxious, approval-seeking men is extraordinarily rare, which makes it extraordinarily powerful. Let's make this concrete. Let's walk through what this actually looks like. Because the theory means nothing if you can't recognize it in yourself. Scenario 1. She takes 6 hours to reply to your message. Your first instinct is to send a follow-up. Maybe a joke to lighten the tone, maybe a question to re-engage, maybe a simple "hey, just to see." You send it. She replies 20 minutes later, apologizes for being busy. And the conversation continues normally. You feel relief, but something happened in those 20 minutes. She experienced you managing your own discomfort at the expense of your composure. She felt the follow-up as what it was, a reach, an inability to sit in uncertainty without flinching. A small signal, yes, but signals accumulate. Scenario 2. She mentions she's free this weekend. You had plans. You cancel them immediately, enthusiastically, without hesitation. The date happens. It's good. But over the following week, something in her behavior is slightly different, a little cooler, a little less initiated. What she registered subconsciously was not your enthusiasm. It was your hierarchy of priorities. And she saw that she sits above everything else, that everything you were doing before she texted was less important than the possibility of being with her. Which means your time, your commitments, your existing life, they have no real weight. They bend instantly for her. And what bends instantly for you is not what you fight to keep. Scenario 3, you are developing something with a woman. It's going well. Then one day, her response to your message is shorter than usual, less warm. You notice it immediately because you are monitoring it. You spend the next 3 hours analyzing what you said, what she might have meant, what shifted. By the time you see her, you are operating from mild anxiety. You're slightly more attentive than usual, slightly more agreeable, says. Likely more careful with your words, trying to recover something you felt slipping. She doesn't know exactly what you're doing, but she feels the shift. She feels the tentiveness. She feels the care, the wrong kind of care. The kind that says, I'm worried about losing you. Not the kind that says, I enjoy being here, and desire. Female desire specifically does not respond to worry. It responds to presence, confident, stable, unguarded presence. This is the pattern. These are the invisible losses. This is how a man with good intentions, real affection, and genuine effort still ends up watching something dissolve that he never understood how to hold. Here is where most self-improvement content fails you. It identifies the problem, then offers surface-level fixes. Be confident, be mysterious, play it cool. These are costumes, not transformations, and she will feel the difference immediately. Real reconstruction happens at the level of identity, not behavior. First build something that exists independent of her, not because of her, not to impress her. Something real, a project, a discipline, a craft, a standard of physical conditioning, a financial direction, anything that gives your day meaning before you ever think about her. This is not advice about self-improvement for its own sake, though that too has value. This is about restructuring your identity so that your worth is self-generated, not externally dependent. The man who is building something does not refresh his messages every 7 minutes. He has somewhere else to be, and that somewhere else is visible, not in what he says, in how he operates, in the quiet confidence of a man who is not waiting for anyone's approval to begin. Second, reclaim your silence. Most men fill silence with noise because silence feels like loss of control. They send the extra message, make the extra joke, add the extra explanation, all tea. All manage discomfort. The ability to sit in silence without anxiety is one of the most powerful things you can develop. Not silence as a strategy, silence as a genuine comfort with your own company. When you can be alone, truly peacefully alone, without reaching for external stimulation or validation, you become a fundamentally different man to be around because what she feels is a man who does not need her to feel complete. And paradoxically, that is the man she most wants to be with. Third, discipline your physical presence. Posture is not superficial. Your physical bearing communicates your internal state before you speak a single word. The man who walks with collapsed posture, who breaks eye contact first, who takes up less space than he's entitled to, he is broadcasting submission before the conversation begins. Straighten. Slow down. Take your time with words. Own the space you're in. This is not performance. This is alignment. Bringing your external presentation in line with the internal authority you are building. Fourth, develop emotional independence. This is the hardest one. It means that your mood, your stability, your sense of self cannot be contingent on how she responded this morning. It means you do not allow her behavior to determine your internal weather. When she's warm, you enjoy it. When she's cold, you do not collapse. This requires a foundation. A belief real and earned that you are enough independent of anyone's validation. Not arrogance, not arrogance, not indifference, just the settled knowledge that your value exists whether or not she chooses to see it. The man who has this is nearly impossible to destabilize. And a man who cannot be destabilized is one of the rarest things in modern culture, which makes him almost automatically one of the most compelling. He who is easily moved communicates that he is easily replaced. Think about that. Every time you allow her behavior to visibly alter your composure, every time you chase, compensate, overinvest, overexpand, you are revealing that your equilibrium depends on her. You are giving her, without knowing it, enormous power over your psychological state, and power freely given is never respected. The prince who can be rattled by a rumor has already lost control of his kingdom. The man who can be rattled by a slow reply has already communicated the limits of his self-possession. This does not mean becoming stone. It means becoming rooted. The tree with deep roots does not panic in the storm. It bends, it moves, it responds, but it does not uproot. Its center holds. Your center must hold. Not because it makes you more attractive, though it does, but because a man without a center is a man living at the mercy of external conditions, and that is no way to live, regardless of who is watching. Here is the refrain that separates the men who understand from the men who don't. Most men operate in relationships from a position of hoping to be chosen. They present themselves, invest themselves, mold themselves, and then wait. Wait for the signal that says, "You are enough. You have been selected. You are safe." The man Machiavelli would have respected operates differently. He chooses, he evaluates, he decides, he determines based on his own standards, his own discernment, his own sense of what he values. Whether this person, this dynamic, this connection is worthy of his continued presence, not arrogantly, not coldly, but with the quiet authority of a man who knows what he brings and does not apologize for requiring the same in return. This shift from hoping to be chosen to actively choosing changes everything about how you move, how you communicate, how you are perceived, because it is not a technique. It is a truth about who you are, and she will feel the difference instantly. The man who pests to be chosen is reactive. His entire energy is oriented outward, reading her, adjusting to her, seeking signals from her. The man who chooses is oriented inward. His standards guide him. His presence is real, not performed. His attention is a gift he offers because he wants to, not because he fears the consequences of withholding it. That man does not lose value, not because he has learned the rules of attraction, but because he has stopped playing a game designed to make him lose. He has built something real, a center, a direction, a self that exists independent of her perception of it. And that self, by its nature, commands a different quality of response. Before you leave this video, answer these questions. In your last significant interaction with a woman you are interested in, were you choosing or were you hoping to be chosen? When she went quiet, did your emotional state remain stable, or did you begin to monitor and manage? Do you have a life she has to enter, or does your life restructure itself to accommodate her availability? Is your sense of value internal, earned, owned, settled? Or does it depend on her warmth to feel real? These are not comfortable questions. They are not meant to be. They are the exact questions the researchers' subjects answered without knowing they were answering them. Every time they described a man whose interest peaked too fast, whose messages came too quickly, whose need was too visible too soon, you already know which type of man you have been. The only question that matters now is which man you are willing to become. Not the man who pleases, not the man who chases, not the man who monitors and compensates and hopes, the man who builds, the man who holds his center, the man who chooses with full awareness, full presence, and zero apology. That man does not worry about losing value. He never had to. There is a type of man you have encountered in your life. Maybe once, maybe twice, rarely more than that. He walks into a room and something shifts. Not because he announced himself, not because he performed anything. Something in the atmosphere changes almost imperceptibly, and people feel it before they can name it. Women notice him without knowing why they noticed him. Men adjust their posture slightly in his presence without realizing they've done it. You have felt this. You know exactly what I'm describing. Now here is the question nobody asks. What is that precisely? What is that quality, that weight, that gravitational pull that certain men carry? It is not confidence in the motivational poster sense. It is not dominance in the aggressive sense. It is not mystery in the manufactured sense. It is structure, internal structure, the visible evidence of a man who has organized himself, his values, his time, his energy, his attention around something real, something that existed before she arrived and will continue after she leaves. The man who carries that structure doesn't need to communicate it. It radiates. It precedes him into every room. It stays after he leaves. That is what you are building toward, not a technique, not a persona, a structure. And structure, unlike confidence, is not something you feel. It is something you build deliberately, consistently, often quietly, without applause, without anyone watching. It is the accumulation of days where you did what you said you would do for yourself, not for an audience. It is the pattern of choices that over time become character, and character, unlike mood, cannot be faked. This is why the researchers' findings pointed not to specific behaviors, but to an underlying state. The men who lost value lost it because their state was anxious, contingent, externally referenced. The men who maintained it, the ones the woe, men described with a particular kind of quiet respect, even admiration, maintained it because their state was internal, stable, self-directed. You cannot replicate the second state while operating from the first. You cannot perform centeredness from a place of anxiety. The performance collapses the moment she tests it, and she will test it not deliberately biologically, because female attraction is in part a stress test. It is trying to determine beneath the surface presentation what a man is actually made of. The man made of real structure passes every time, not because he has rehearsed the right answers, because he has built the right foundation. In The Prince, Machiavelli makes a distinction that most readers miss because they are too focused on the dramatic parts. The sections about force and cunning and political maneuvering. The distinction he makes quietly, almost in passing, is this: the prince who is consistent is feared and respected. The prince who vacillates is despised, not disliked. Despised because inconsistency communicates something at a primal level that logic cannot override. It communicates unreliability, unpredictability in the wrong direction. Not the intriguing unpredictability of a man with depth, but the destabilizing unpredictability of a man who cannot hold his position under pressure. Translate this to your daily life. You are kind one day and withdrawn the next, not because you are complex, but because her behavior is driving your emotional state. You are confident when she's warm and anxious when she's distant. Your energy fluctuates based on what she gives you. She feels this, and what she feels is a man whose internal weather is controlled by external conditions, a man whose mood is her responsibility, a man she has to manage. Nothing collapses desire faster than feeling responsible for a man's emotional state. This is not what most men untun. To stand about the burden of emotional dependency, they think the risk is appearing weak. The deeper risk is making her feel like your emotional caretaker. And a woman who feels like your caretaker does not feel attracted to you. She feels tired. The cure is not to suppress your emotions. The cure is to have a life rich enough, a foundation stable enough that her behavior does not have the power to define your day. When your sense of direction comes from within, from the project you're building, the discipline you're maintaining, the standard you've set for yourself, her temperature becomes interesting information, not a crisis to manage. This is what Machiavellian consistency looks like in a real man's life. Not emotional rigidity, not manufactured stoicism, the genuine stability of a man who knows where he is going and does not require female approval to continue the journey. Here's what most men get wrong about self-improvement in the context of attraction. They focus on outputs, things she will see or hear or notice, better clothes, better conversation, better jokes, better messages. Outputs matter, but outputs without internal upgrades are theater. And she will feel the theater. She will enjoy the show perhaps, but she will not respect the actor the way she respects the man. The three upgrades that actually shift perceived value happen invisibly long before she sees any result. Upgrade 1. The relationship with your own time. How you treat your own time communicates your self-assessment more clearly than anything you say. If your time bends for anyone who asks, you are broadcasting that it has no value. If your schedule is real, if you have commitments that you honor not because of obligation but because of genuine investment in your own direction, then your time becomes a finite resource, and finite resources are valued. This doesn't mean becoming rigid or unavailable. It means that when you give your time, it means something because it came from somewhere, because it costs something because you chose this over other things that also mattered. The man who has nothing better to do is the man who is always available. The man who makes space for you despite his full life, that man's presence lands differently. Upgrade 2. The relationship with discomfort. One of the clearest signals a man sends without a single word is how he handles discomfort. The discomfort of uncertainty, the discomfort of not knowing where he stands, the discomfort of silence, of ambiguity, of her not making it easy. Most men resolve this discomfort immediately. They send the message, they ask the question, they push for clarity, because ambiguity is unbearable when your sense of safety depends on her response. The man who can hold discomfort, who can sit in the not knowing, without flinching, without reaching, without managing. That man signals something ancient and compelling. He signals that his stability is not contingent on resolution, that he trusts himself to handle whatever the outcome is. That trust, that is what she feels, and it is extraordinarily attractive. Not build your relationship with discomfort deliberately. Do hard things not because they impress anyone, but because they train your nervous system to remain calm under pressure, cold exposure, difficult conversations, commitments that test your discipline, physical training that takes you to your edge. Each of these consistently practiced rewires your baseline response to stress. And your baseline response to stress is what she is actually evaluating beneath every interaction, beneath every exchange, whether she knows it or not. Upgrade 3. The relationship with your own judgment. Most men are in a constant, quiet negotiation with themselves, second-guessing their decisions. Seeking external validation for their choices, adjusting their opinions based on who they're with. This internal instability is invisible to the untrained eye, but felt immediately by women who are paying attention. Of the man who trusts his own judgment, who forms a view, holds it without apology, adjusts it only when presented with genuinely compelling information, and never merely because someone else is uncomfortable with it, that man projects a kind of authority that is almost impossible to manufacture. This is why Machiavelli's prince is advised to choose his own counselors carefully and then hear them fully, but to decide alone. Because leadership, real leadership, requires the willingness to be wrong in your own name rather than safe in someone else's opinion. Do apply this to every area of your life. Develop views. Hold them. Express them without hedging everything into ambiguity to avoid conflict. The man who says, "I think this," and means it not aggressively, just clearly, is a man whose words carry weight. And a man whose words carry weight is a man whose presence carries weight.